In the frozen wasteland where survival means cruelty, one outcast made the choice that would shatter kingdoms. Will you stay until the end to see her rise? Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I know you're watching from the start. The wind screamed across the tundra like a living thing bent on murder. Calith Vorn crouched behind a crumbling boulder, her breath coming in ragged clouds that froze before they could disperse. The storm had come out of nowhere. One moment the sky had been a pale, sickly gray. The next it was a howling wall of white that swallowed the world whole. She'd seen blizzards before. She'd survived worse. But tonight, something felt different. Tonight, the cold seemed to have teeth. She pulled her tattered cloak tighter around her shoulders, though it did little good. The fabric was more holes than thread now, scavenged from a dead traveler she'd found 3 moons back. Her wolf form would have kept her warmer, but shifting took energy that required food, and food was something she hadn't seen in 2 days. Worthless. The word still echoed in her head, sharp as broken glass. That's what they'd called her the day they drove her out. Alpha Torvin had stood on the ceremonial stone, his massive frame blocking out the sun, his voice carrying across the gathered pack like a death sentence. She has no wolf strength, no hunter's instinct, no value to this pack. The others had watched in silence, some with pity, most with relief that it wasn't them. Her own sister Marin had looked away, not out of shame, but out of indifference. You are cast out, Calith Vorn. May the wilderness teach you what we could not. That had been 8 months ago. 8 months of hunting scraps, sleeping in caves, avoiding territories where other packs would tear her apart for sport. 8 months of learning that exile wasn't a punishment. It was a slow execution. The wind shifted, and Calith caught a scent that made her freeze. Blood. Fresh blood, still warm despite the killing cold. Her mind screamed at her to stay hidden. Blood meant predators. Blood meant a fight she couldn't win. But something else stirred beneath the fear. Curiosity, maybe, or the faint ember of something she'd thought exile had burned out of her. She rose slowly, her hand falling to the crude bone knife at her belt. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. She moved toward the scent, her footsteps silent despite the howling wind. The landscape was a nightmare of white and shadow. Snowdrifts rising like frozen waves, ice-slicked rocks jutting from the ground like broken teeth. She climbed a small ridge, squinting against the driving snow, and that's when she saw it. A shape, small, huddled against the base of a dead tree. At first she thought it was an animal, a fox maybe, or a young caribou caught in the storm. But as she drew closer, her breath caught. It was a child. A boy, no more than 6 or 7, curled into a tight ball against the tree trunk. His clothing was expensive, finely woven wool lined with fur, the kind only nobility wore. But it was torn now, shredded by claws or fangs, soaked through with melting snow. Blood stained the white ground around him, dark and spreading. He was dying. Calith's first instinct was to turn around, to leave him there. A child this far north, dressed like that? He was someone's problem, probably someone powerful, someone who would bring soldiers and questions and violence into her carefully maintained solitude. She took a step back. The boy's eyes opened. They were silver, not gray, not pale blue, silver, like moonlight captured in glass. They locked onto hers with an intensity that shouldn't have been possible for someone so close to death. "Please," he whispered. His voice was barely audible over the wind. "Please, don't leave me." Calith's jaw clenched. She'd learned to survive by being ruthless, by making hard choices, by putting herself first because no one else ever would. Saving this boy would cost her warmth, cost her energy, cost her the precious little safety she'd carved out for herself. Worthless. The word echoed again, but this time it felt different, like a challenge instead of a condemnation. "Damn it," she muttered. She dropped to her knees beside him, pulling off her cloak and wrapping it around his tiny, shaking frame. He was lighter than she expected, all bone and sinew beneath the expensive clothes. She pulled him against her chest, and he whimpered, his small hands clutching at her shirt. "I've got you," she said, though she had no idea why. "I've got you." She needed shelter. The cave she'd been using was too far. He'd be dead before they made it halfway. But there was another option, a narrow crevice in the rocks she'd passed earlier, barely wide enough for a person but deep enough to block the wind. She ran. The storm fought her with every step, wind tearing at her hair, snow blinding her, cold burning her exposed skin like fire. The boy's breathing was shallow, his body going limp in her arms. She could feel his life slipping away, could feel the universe preparing to take him. "No," she snarled, "not yet." The crevice appeared out of the white chaos like a gift. She squeezed inside, pulling the boy with her, wedging them both into the narrow space. It was cramped and uncomfortable, but the wind couldn't reach them here. The cold was still brutal, but it was survivable. She laid him down on the stone floor, her hands moving quickly to assess his injuries. 3 deep gashes across his ribs, claw marks, definitely animal, probably a snow bear or a rogue wolf. The wounds had stopped bleeding, which was either a good sign or a very bad one. His skin was pale, almost translucent, his lips turning blue. Hypothermia, blood loss, shock. He needed warmth, medicine, a trained healer. All she had was herself. She pulled him against her again, wrapping her body around his, trying to share what little heat she had left. Her teeth chattered, her muscles trembling with exhaustion and cold. This was insane. This was suicide. But she didn't let go. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice rough. His eyes fluttered open again, those impossible silver eyes. "Lior," he whispered. "I'm Caleth. You're going to be okay, Lior. You hear me? You're going to make it." He didn't respond. His eyes drifted shut again. Panic surged through her. She shook him gently. "Stay with me. Come on, kid. Stay with me." His hand moved, weak and trembling, reaching for hers. She took it without thinking, threading her fingers through his small ones. The moment their skin touched, fire exploded across her palm. Caleth screamed. Light erupted from their joined hands, blinding and searing, a white gold flame that had no heat but burned nonetheless. She tried to pull away, but her hand was locked in place, fused to his by something far beyond her understanding. The light spread up her arm, racing across her skin like living lightning, branching into patterns that looked almost like runes. Ancient, powerful, alive. The pain was indescribable. It felt like her bones were being rewritten, her blood turned to molten metal, her very soul being branded with something foreign and vast. She gasped for air, her vision blurring, her mind fracturing under the weight of whatever was happening. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The light vanished, the pain cut off like a severed rope. Caleth collapsed backward, her hand still tingling, her whole body shaking. She stared down at her palm. A mark. Intricate and beautiful, etched into her skin in silver lines that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. It looked like a wolf's head surrounded by thorns and stars, ancient script winding through the design in a language she didn't recognize. "What the hell?" she breathed. Lior's eyes opened again, wider this time, more alert. Color was returning to his cheeks. His breathing had steadied. The wounds on his chest were still there, but they looked better. Less angry. Less fatal. "You saved me," he whispered. "The bond, it chose you." "What bond? What are you talking about?" But before he could answer, a sound cut through the storm. A howl. Not animal, not natural. Hunting. Caleth's blood turned to ice. She knew that sound. She'd heard it before, in nightmares, and in the stories elders told to frighten children. It was the sound of a tracker, wolves bred and twisted by dark magic, trained to hunt specific prey no matter how far they ran, no matter where they hid. And they were close. "They found me," Lior said, his voice small and terrified. "They always find me." "Who's they?" Caleth demanded. "The ones who killed my mother, the ones who want me dead." Another howl joined the first, then another. A whole pack. Caleth's mind raced. She couldn't fight them. She could barely fight a rabbit in her current state. Running was the only option, but running with a half-dead child through a blizzard was just a slower way to die. Unless... She looked down at the mark on her hand, still glowing faintly. "This bond," she said slowly. "What does it do?" Lior's eyes met hers. "It connects you to him, my father, the Alpha King." The world tilted. Alpha King. The phrase hung in the air like a curse. There were stories about the Alpha King, Draven Kalor, the Wolf of the North, the Unbreakable. The king who'd united a dozen fractured packs under one banner through sheer force of will and violence. He was a legend, a monster, a myth, and apparently this boy's father. "You're telling me," Kalith said, her voice dangerously calm, "that I just bonded myself to the most powerful shifter in the world." "It wasn't me," Lior said quickly. "The bond chooses. It saw something in you, something strong. I'm not strong. I'm the one they threw away, remember?" They were wrong. The howls were getting closer. Kalith could hear claws on stone now, could smell the wet dog stench of the trackers cutting through even the blizzard's fury. She made a decision. "Can you walk?" Lior nodded, though his legs shook when he tried to stand. "Good. Because we're about to run, and if you fall, I'm not stopping." It was a lie, and they both knew it. She grabbed his hand, the one without the mark, and pulled him toward the crevice entrance. The storm was waiting, hungry and cold, but the trackers were hungrier. They ran. The landscape was a blur of white and shadow, the ground treacherous with ice and hidden rocks. Kalith's lungs burned, her legs screaming in protest, but she didn't slow down. Lior stumbled beside her, his small hand gripping hers like a lifeline. Behind them, the howls grew louder, closer. She risked a glance back and immediately wished she hadn't. They were massive, twice the size of normal wolves, their fur matted and dark, their eyes glowing with sickly yellow light. There were 5 of them, moving with unnatural coordination, their movements jerky and wrong like puppets controlled by invisible strings. Magic. Dark magic. One of them lunged, closing the distance with impossible speed. Kalith shoved Lior to the side and spun, drawing her bone knife. The tracker's jaws snapped shut inches from her throat, its breath hot and rancid. She slashed upward, the blade catching it across the snout. It yelped and fell back, but 2 more were already circling. "Run!" she screamed at Lior. "I won't leave you. I said run!" He hesitated for just a moment, long enough for her to see the fear and loyalty warring in his silver eyes. Then he turned and bolted into the storm. The trackers ignored him. They wanted her now. All of them. They attacked as one. Kalith fought like a cornered animal, all desperation and fury. Her knife found flesh twice, 3 times, but it wasn't enough. Teeth sank into her shoulder, claws raked across her back. Weight slammed into her from behind and drove her to the ground. She was going to die. After everything, after exile, after 8 months of clawing her way through hell, after saving that boy, she was going to die in the snow, torn apart by monsters. No, the thought wasn't hers. It was deeper, older, resonating through the mark on her hand like a bell. No. Power surged through her, foreign and overwhelming, like someone else's strength pouring into her veins. Her vision sharpened, her senses exploded. She could smell the trackers' fear beneath their bloodlust, could hear the unnatural magic thrumming in their bones, could feel the wrongness of them. She roared. The sound that tore from her throat wasn't human. It was pure wolf, primal and commanding, and the trackers actually flinched. Kalith surged to her feet, throwing off the one on her back. Her hand, the marked one, blazed with silver light. She didn't understand it, didn't know how to control it, but she let it flow anyway. She punched the nearest tracker in the chest. The light exploded outward, and the creature disintegrated, blown apart into ash and shadow that the wind scattered instantly. The others retreated, their yellow eyes wide, their bodies low and submissive. Then they turned and fled. Kalith stood there, breathing hard, her hand still glowing. The power faded slowly, reluctantly, leaving her feeling hollow and exhausted. What the hell just happened? She didn't have time to figure it out. Lior was still out there, alone in the storm. She found him huddled behind a rock formation, shaking but alive. When he saw her, relief flooded his face. "You're okay," he breathed. "For now," she said. "But we need to move. Those things might come back." "They won't. Not after what you did." "What did I do?" "You used the bond, my father's strength. It flows through the mark when you need it most." Kalith looked down at her hand. The mark had stopped glowing, but she could still feel it. A faint warmth, a connection stretching away into the distance like an invisible thread. "So somewhere out there," she said slowly, Your father felt that. Yes. And now he knows where we are. Yes. Great, just great. But even as she said it, a part of her, the part that had been alone for 8 months, the part that had forgotten what it felt like to be connected to something larger than herself, felt a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. She took Lior's hand. Come on. We need to find real shelter before the storm kills us. They moved through the white chaos together, two outcasts bound by magic and fate, hunted by darkness and heading toward an uncertain future. Behind them, the wilderness howled. Ahead, something vast and powerful stirred, drawn by the Mark's call. And Calith Vorn, the wolf they'd called worthless, took her first steps toward a destiny that would shatter kingdoms. The cave Calith found wasn't much, a shallow hollow carved into the mountainside by centuries of wind and ice. But it was dry, and the entrance was narrow enough to defend. She'd stumbled across it more by luck than skill, her body running on fumes, Lior barely conscious in her arms. She laid him down on the stone floor and immediately set to building a fire. Her hands shook as she struck her flint against the blade, once, twice, 3 times before a spark finally caught in the bundle of dried moss she'd been carrying. The tiny flame grew slowly, grudgingly, fed by twigs and branches she'd scavenged along the way. Warmth. Blessed, precious warmth. Lior curled toward it instinctively, his small body still trembling. Calith checked his wounds again. They were healing, impossibly fast, the edges already knitting together. Whatever that mark had done, it had saved his life. She looked down at her own palm. The silver lines still glowed faintly in the firelight, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She could feel it now, that connection, like a rope stretching across impossible distance, taut and thrumming with energy. And on the other end, someone was pulling back. He knows, Lior whispered, his eyes half open. He's coming. Your father. Yes. Calith fed another branch to the fire. Tell me about him. Lior was quiet for a long moment. He's the strongest wolf alive. He united the northern packs when everyone said it was impossible. He's never lost a challenge, never shown weakness. The boy's voice grew smaller. But he's far away, and the ones hunting me, they're already here. Who are they? The Shadowborn. The name sent a chill down Calith's spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Everyone knew the stories. Wolves twisted by forbidden magic, their souls sold for power, serving masters who lived in the spaces between light and dark. They were assassins, torturers, hunters of the supernatural, and they were relentless. Why do they want you dead? Because my mother was the heir to the Eastern Crown. When she bonded with my father, it united 2 bloodlines that were never supposed to meet. He hesitated. I'm proof that the old boundaries don't matter anymore. Some people can't accept that. So they killed her. And they've been hunting me ever since. His silver eyes found hers. You shouldn't have saved me. Now they'll come for you too. Calith almost laughed. Kid, I've been hunted since the day I was born. At least now I know why. She meant it as a joke, but Lior didn't smile. Instead, he reached out and touched the mark on her hand. The moment his fingers made contact, images flooded her mind. A massive throne room carved from black stone. A figure standing at its center, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like molten gold. Power radiated from him in waves, so intense it was almost visible. He was looking down at something in his hand, and even through the vision, Calith could feel his rage and desperation. Where is my son? The voice resonated through her skull like thunder. Then the vision shattered, and she was back in the cave, gasping for air. What the hell was that? The bond, Lior said quietly, goes both ways. He can feel you too now. Feel that you're protecting me. That's not creepy at all. Despite everything, the corner of Lior's mouth twitched. He's not as scary as people say. Uh-huh. He's not. He's just intense, Calith snorted. Intense. Right. She pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. We need to rest. At dawn we move. There's a trading post about 2 days' journey south. Might be able to get supplies, maybe even higher protection. They won't help us. Why not? Because when people find out who I am, they either try to ransom me or kill me. There's no middle ground. Then we don't tell them who you are. Lior looked skeptical, but too exhausted to argue. Within minutes, he was asleep, his breathing deep and steady. Kalith stayed awake, watching the cave entrance, her bone knife across her lap. The mark on her hand pulsed softly, a constant reminder of the choice she'd made, a choice that was about to cost her everything. She just didn't know it yet. Dawn came cold and pale, the storm having blown itself out during the night. Kalith woke Lior gently, and they ate a meager breakfast of dried meat and snow melted over the fire. Then they set out, moving carefully through the frozen wilderness. The landscape was beautiful in a brutal way, endless white plains broken by jagged rock formations, ice crystals glittering in the weak sunlight like scattered diamonds. But Kalith knew better than to trust the beauty. This land killed the careless and the weak without mercy. They'd been walking for maybe 3 hours when Lior stopped suddenly. "Someone's following us." Kalith's hand went to her knife. "How many?" "I don't know, but they're close." She scanned the horizon, eyes narrowed. There, a flash of movement behind a distant boulder, then another, to the left. They were being herded, she realized, pushed in a specific direction. "Run," she said, "but now!" They bolted. Behind them, howls erupted, not the twisted screams of the trackers, but the hunting calls of regular wolves. A pack. And they were gaining fast. Kalith's mind raced. Regular wolves wouldn't attack humans without reason. They were being controlled, driven like weapons by someone with power. The ground dropped away suddenly, and they skidded to a halt at the edge of a steep ravine. Icy water rushed far below, fed by underground springs that never froze. There was no way across, no way forward. They were trapped. The wolves appeared from the white landscape like ghosts materializing, 7 of them, massive and powerful, their eyes fixed on their prey. But they didn't attack. They simply waited, forming a loose semicircle. Then the pack parted, and a figure stepped through. Kalith's blood turned to ice. She knew that walk, knew the way he carried himself, all swagger and cruelty, knew the scar that ran down the left side of his face, courtesy of a rival he'd killed in front of the entire pack. Rask Thorn, her replacement. He was taller than she remembered, broader through the shoulders, his dark hair pulled back in a warrior's knot. He wore the mark of second, the position she'd been denied, burned into the leather armor on his chest. And he was smiling. "Well, well," he drawled. "Little Kalith, the worthless one. Didn't expect to find you still breathing." "Rask," she kept her voice steady. "What are you doing this far north?" "Hunting." His eyes flicked to Lior and something predatory gleamed there. Imagine my surprise when I picked up a scent I recognized, mixed with something interesting, something valuable. He's just a boy. He's the Alpha King's son. Rask took a step closer. "Do you have any idea how much he's worth? The ransom alone could buy 3 territories. He's a child. He's a commodity." Rask's smile widened. "And you're an unexpected bonus. That mark on your hand, I can smell the power from here. You've bonded with Draven Kalor himself. The pack is going to find that very interesting." Kalith's stomach dropped. "You're taking us back." "Oh, not back. Torvin wouldn't know what to do with you. No, I'm thinking bigger. There's a market for bonded wolves, Kalith, especially ones connected to royalty. You'll fetch a fortune from the right buyer." "You can't." "I can. I am." He gestured, and the wolves moved closer, tightening the circle. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Come quietly, and I'll make sure the boy isn't hurt." Lior pressed against Kalith's side, trembling. She could feel his fear, could smell it mixing with her own. She had 2 choices: surrender and hope Rask kept his word, unlikely, or fight, and probably die. The mark on her hand pulsed, warm and insistent. "Trust it," something whispered in her mind. "Trust him." She didn't know if the voice was hers or the bonds or something else entirely, but she knew one thing: she was done being powerless. "No," she said. Rask's smile faded. "Excuse me?" "I said no. You're not taking him. You're not taking me. You're going to turn around and walk away." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "You always were delusional, but fine. We'll do this the hard way." He nodded to his wolves. "Take them. Don't kill the boy, but the girl, make her bleed first." The wolves lunged. Kylith shoved Lior behind her and raised her marked hand. She had no idea what she was doing, no training, no control. But the power was there, coiled and waiting, and she grabbed it with everything she had. Silver light exploded from her palm. The nearest wolf yelped and tumbled backward, smoking. The others hesitated, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. They'd never seen anything like this. Neither had Rask. "What the hell?" he breathed. Kylith didn't answer. She was too busy trying not to pass out. The power had drained her in seconds, leaving her dizzy and weak. But it had bought them time. "Run," she gasped to Lior. "Where?" "Anywhere." She grabbed his hand and turned toward the ravine. The drop was insane. 30 feet at least, the water below dark and churning. Jumping was suicide. But staying was worse. "Hold on to me," she ordered. "What are you—" She jumped. The world became a blur of wind and screaming. Hers, Lior's, maybe both. The icy water hit like a physical blow, driving the air from her lungs, shocking her system into paralysis. The current grabbed them immediately, pulling them under, spinning them like leaves. Kylith kicked hard, fighting toward the surface. Her hand locked around Lior's wrist, refusing to let go even as the cold tried to pry her fingers loose. They broke the surface together, gasping and choking. "Swim!" she shouted over the roar of the water. "Toward the bank!" They fought the current with everything they had. Kylith's muscles screamed, her lungs burned, her body begging her to give up, to let the water take her. But she didn't. She couldn't. Her fingers found rock. She pulled them both onto a narrow ledge, collapsing in a heap, water streaming from their clothes. Above them, she could hear Rask shouting orders. The wolves were pacing the ravine edge, unable to follow. "We need to move," she panted, "before they find another way down." Lior nodded, too exhausted to speak. They climbed. The cliff face was treacherous, icy, and steep, but fear made them strong. Kylith's fingers found holds in the rock, her body moving on pure instinct. Beside her, Lior matched her pace, the boy's small frame surprisingly agile. They reached the top and kept running. The landscape blurred. Ice, rock, snow, repeat. Kylith's body was shutting down, hypothermia setting in from the river, her wet clothes freezing against her skin. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Then she heard it. Howls. Different from before. Deeper. More organized. Not Rask's pack. Her old pack. They emerged from the tree line like ghosts. 12 wolves, all in human form, all wearing the mark of the Northern Ridge pack. And at their head, striding forward with the confidence of someone who'd never known defeat, was Alpha Torvin himself. He looked exactly as she remembered, massive, scarred, his eyes the color of winter storms. He'd aged in the 8 months since her exile, new lines creasing his face, but the power radiating from him was unchanged. "Kylith Vorn," he said, his voice carrying across the frozen ground. "You've caused quite a commotion." She stopped running. There was nowhere left to go. The ravine was behind them, Rask's pack somewhere in the white chaos, and now her old pack ahead. They were surrounded. Lior pressed against her side. "Who is he?" "The man who threw me away," she said quietly. Torvin's eyes flicked to the boy, then to the mark glowing on her hand. Something shifted in his expression, recognition, maybe, or greed. "You've bonded with the Alpha King," he said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't my choice. Fate rarely is. He took a step closer. "You're coming with us, Kylith. Both of you." "Why?" "You said I was worthless. That was before you became valuable." His smile was cold. "The boy is a political asset, and you're leverage. Draven Kaelor will pay anything to get his son back, and to retrieve his bonded mate." The words hit her like a slap. "I'm not his mate." "The mark says otherwise." Torvin gestured to his wolves. "Take them, gently. We need them intact." The pack moved forward, weapons drawn. Not to kill, to capture. Kylith's hand went to her knife, but it was useless. She was one person against 12 trained warriors. She was exhausted, frozen, outmatched. She was going to lose. Lior's small hand found hers. "Use the bond," he whispered. "Call him." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You just have to ask." She looked down at the mark. The silver lines were pulsing faster now, almost frantic, as if sensing her desperation. Please, she thought, if you're out there, if this connection means anything, help us. The mark flared white-hot. Power erupted from it, not the crude blast she'd used before, but something focused, intentional. It shot upward like a pillar of light, piercing the gray sky, visible for miles in every direction. A beacon, a summons. Torvin's eyes widened. What have you done? I called for help, Kalith said, her voice stronger than she felt. And trust me, you don't want to be here when it arrives. For the first time in her life, she saw fear flicker across the Alpha's face. Then Rask emerged from the tree line with his pack, drawn by the light, and the fear turned to calculation. Torvin, Rask called, we have a problem. I can see that. The boy's mine. I found him first. Possession isn't ownership, Thorn. He's in my territory now. Your territory is 3 miles south. Borders are flexible. The two packs faced each other, tension crackling like lightning between them. Kalith realized with a sinking feeling that they were about to fight, not over justice or honor, but over who got to sell her and Lior like livestock. She looked down at the boy. His silver eyes were wide with terror. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. I should have left you in the snow. Then I'd be dead. This is better. Is it? Before he could answer, a sound cut through the air, low and resonant, like a war horn blown by something inhuman. It came from the north, growing louder, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Everyone froze. The sound came again, closer now, and with it came a presence so overwhelming it made Kalith's knees buckle. Power, ancient and absolute, moving toward them like an avalanche. Torvin's face went pale. Impossible. What? Rask demanded. What is that? That, Torvin said slowly, is the Alpha King. The northern horizon erupted in movement. Wolves, hundreds of them, pouring over the landscape like a dark tide. And at their head, a figure that made every other shifter present look like children playing at war. Draven Kalor. Even from a distance, Kalith could feel him, could feel the bond singing with recognition, pulling her toward him like gravity. He was massive, his wolf form black as midnight, his eyes burning gold. Power radiated from him in visible waves, bending the air, making the snow around him hiss and steam. He'd crossed half the continent in less than a day. For his son, for the bond, for her. Torvin made a decision. Retreat, now. But, one of his wolves began. Now! The northern ridge pack scattered like leaves in the wind, disappearing into the white landscape with the speed of trained warriors who knew when they were outmatched. Rask hesitated a moment longer, his eyes locked on Lior, calculating the odds. Then he cursed and ran, his own pack following. Kalith stood frozen as the Alpha King's army approached, as that overwhelming presence grew closer and closer until she could barely breathe under the weight of it. The wolves parted, and Draven Kalor shifted. He was even more terrifying as a man. Tall, easily 7 feet, with broad shoulders and arms corded with muscle. His face was all hard angles and brutal beauty, his eyes that impossible molten gold. Scars crisscrossed his bare chest, each one a story of violence survived. He wore black leather and steel weapons strapped across his back, power dripping from him like blood. He strode toward them, and Kalith's every instinct screamed at her to run. This was a predator, an apex creature, something that could kill her with a thought. But then his eyes found Lior, and everything changed. The terrifying Alpha King fell to his knees in the snow, his arms opening wide. Father! Lior broke free from Kalith's grip and ran, throwing himself into those massive arms. Draven caught him, pulling him close, his whole body shaking. My son, he breathed. My boy. You're alive. You're safe. I'm okay. She saved me. She kept me safe. Draven's golden eyes lifted, finding Kalith across the distance. The bond flared between them, hot and undeniable. You, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You're the one. Kalith couldn't speak, couldn't move. She was pinned in place by that gaze, by the sheer force of him. He stood slowly, Lior still in his arms, and walked toward her. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, heat and power, and barely controlled violence wrapped in flesh. He stopped inches away, so close she could feel his breath. "You saved my son," he said quietly. Yes. You bonded with me without permission, without understanding what it meant. I didn't have a choice. It just happened. And you called for me, summoned me across half the world with nothing but need and desperation." His hand rose, and she flinched, but he only touched the mark on her palm gently, reverently. "Do you understand what you've done?" "I've made a mess," she whispered. To her shock, he smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost human. "You've bound yourself to me, declared yourself under my protection, made yourself a target for every enemy I have, and I have many. I know, you should have let him die." The words were harsh, but there was no condemnation in them, only acknowledgement of the hard truth. "I couldn't," she said. "He was just a child. And you were nothing, an exile. Worthless, they called you." She flinched, and his hand moved to her chin, tilting her face up. "They were wrong," he said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You're the strongest person I've ever met, and you're mine now, whether you like it or not." Before she could respond, one of his wolves approached, a woman with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. "My lord," she said, "we have a problem." Draven didn't look away from Calith. "Speak." "The Shadowborn. They're moving on the eastern border. At least 50 of them. They're not retreating. They're regrouping." "For what?" "An assault. They want the boy. And," she hesitated, "they want her. They know about the bond." Draven's eyes flashed dangerously. "How many of our warriors can reach us by nightfall?" "Maybe 200. But the Shadowborn have something else. Something dark. Our scouts couldn't get close enough to identify it, but they said it felt wrong. Like death given form." "The Shadow King," Lior whispered, his face going pale. "He's here. He's finally here." Draven's jaw clenched. He looked at Calith, and she saw the calculation in his eyes, the cold logic of a leader making impossible choices. "Take my son," he said to the silver-haired woman. "Get him south, to the fortress. Full guard." "No!" Lior struggled in his father's arms. "I won't leave you. I won't leave her." "You will, because I command it. Father, please, go." Draven's voice was absolute. "That's an order." The woman took Lior gently but firmly. The boy fought, tears streaming down his face, reaching for Calith. "Don't let them take her," he screamed. "Please, she saved me." "I know," Draven said quietly, "and I will protect her. I swear it." Lior was carried away, his cries echoing across the frozen plain. Calith watched him go, her heart breaking. She'd saved him, kept him alive, and now he was being torn away from her. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Because what's coming will kill him," Draven said flatly. "The Shadow King doesn't take prisoners. He consumes, corrupts, destroys. And he wants you. Why me? Because you're bonded to me, and breaking that bond, killing you while it's still fresh, would cripple me, maybe permanently." His hand was still on her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You've become my greatest weakness, and they know it. Then send me away too. Hide me." "No." "Why not?" His eyes burned into hers. "Because I just found you, and I'll be damned if I let them take you from me now." The words should have been romantic, protective, but there was something possessive in them, something dark. Calith pulled back. "I'm not yours." "Yes," he said softly. "You are. The moment you accepted the bond, you became mine, and I became yours. That's how this works." "I didn't accept anything. It just happened." "Bonds don't just happen, Calith. They're chosen. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere deep inside your soul recognized mine, called to it, and I—" He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. "I answered." Before she could respond, the temperature dropped, not gradually, instantly. The air turned from cold to Arctic in a heartbeat, frost forming on every surface, their breath turning to ice crystals. Draven spun, placing himself between Calith and the north. "He's here," he said. The darkness came like a living thing, oozing across the landscape, swallowing light and warmth and hope. And in that darkness, shapes moved, twisted, wrong, nightmares given flesh. The Shadowborn. They emerged by the dozens, their forms corrupted beyond recognition, their eyes burning with sick green fire. And at their center, tall and terrible, was a figure wrapped in shadows so thick they seemed solid. The Shadow King. He looked almost human. Almost. But his skin was too pale, his movements too fluid, and when he smiled, his teeth were black and sharp. "Draven Kalor," he said, his voice like broken glass. "How kind of you to deliver them both." "You'll have to go through me first," Draven growled. "I was hoping you'd say that." The Shadow King raised his hand, and the Shadowborn charged. Draven's army met them head-on, the two forces colliding in an explosion of violence. Shifters tore into corrupted flesh, claws and teeth flashing, screams and howls filling the air. Draven shifted in an instant, his massive black wolf form launching into the fray. He was a force of nature, tearing through enemies like they were made of paper. But the Shadowborn kept coming. Calith stood frozen, watching the battle unfold, her mind screaming at her to run. She had no weapons, no power, no way to help. Then the Shadow King's eyes found hers. "There you are," he purred. He moved toward her, and Draven intercepted, slamming into him with the force of an avalanche. They tumbled across the ground, a blur of black fur and writhing shadow. Calith ran. She didn't know where she was going, didn't have a plan. She just knew she had to move, had to survive, had to... Arms grabbed her from behind. Rask. He'd circled back, the bastard, waiting for chaos to make his move. "Got you," he hissed in her ear. She slammed her head backward, felt his nose crunch. He cursed, but didn't let go. "You're worth too much to lose," he snarled. "I don't care who I have to sell you to." He dragged her toward the tree line, away from the battle, away from Draven. Calith fought with everything she had, kicking, biting, scratching. But Rask was stronger, trained, ruthless. The mark on her hand blazed with heat. "Fight back," the Bond whispered. "Use me." She grabbed the power again, but this time Rask was ready. He slammed her hand against a rock and she felt something crack. Pain exploded up her arm. The light flickered and died. "Nice try," Rask said. He pulled a rope from his belt, moving to bind her wrists. A shadow fell over them. Rask looked up, and his face went white. Draven stood there, back in human form, covered in blood, his and others. His eyes were pure gold now, no white left, burning with inhuman fury. "Let her go!" Rask released her immediately, stumbling backward. "I was just..." Draven moved faster than thought. His hand closed around Rask's throat, lifting him off the ground. "You touched what's mine," Draven said, his voice vibrating with barely contained rage. "You hurt her." "I didn't know. I'm sorry." "Too late." Draven's hand tightened and Rask's eyes bulged. Calith watched, transfixed and horrified, as the life drained from someone she'd once known. Then Draven dropped him. Rask collapsed in the snow, gasping, alive but broken. "Run," Draven said quietly, "before I change my mind." Rask ran. Draven turned to Calith, and the fury melted into concern. "Your hand." "It's fine. It's broken." He took it gently, his touch impossibly careful for someone who just nearly committed murder. "This is my fault. I should have protected you better. You were fighting an army." "I should have protected you better," he repeated. Behind them, the battle was turning. The Shadow King had disappeared, his forces retreating into the darkness. Draven's army gave chase but didn't pursue far. Too risky. They'd won. For now. Draven looked down at her, his golden eyes searching her face. "This isn't over. He'll come back, stronger, more prepared, and he won't stop until you're dead or he's destroyed the bond." "Then what do we do?" His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing across her cheek. "We fight, together, and we make sure he regrets ever learning your name." The mark pulsed between them, warm and alive, binding them closer with every heartbeat. Calith Vorn, the worthless exile, stood in the snow beside the Alpha King, hunted by darkness and claimed by power, and realized her old life was gone forever. Whatever came next would be written in blood and fire, and she would face it standing. The fortress Draven brought her to wasn't what Calith expected. She'd imagined something grand, towering walls, golden banners, the kind of palace befitting an Alpha King. Instead, it was a war camp carved into the mountainside, all stone and steel and grim efficiency. Hundreds of warriors moved through it with practiced precision, their faces hard, their weapons always within reach. This wasn't a home. It was a stronghold preparing for siege. Draven's healer, a severe woman named Mira with fingers that moved like surgical instruments, set Calith's broken hand with ruthless efficiency. The pain was blinding, but Calith bit down on the leather strap they'd given her and refused to scream. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness invited cruelty. "You're lucky," Mira said, wrapping the splint tight. "Clean break. It'll heal in a few weeks." "Define lucky," Calith muttered. Mira's lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile Calith had seen from her. "Lucky is walking away when the Shadow King wants you dead. Most don't." After Mira left, Calith sat alone in the small stone room they'd given her, staring at the mark on her palm. Even through the bandages, she could feel it pulsing, that constant reminder of the connection she hadn't asked for. The door opened without warning. Draven filled the doorway, still wearing the blood-stained clothes from the battle. He'd washed his face and hands, but crimson still darkened the leather across his chest. He looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from carrying impossible burdens for too long. "How's your hand?" he asked. "Broken, but fixable." She met his eyes. "Where's Lior?" "Safe, 300 miles south with my most trusted warriors. The Shadow King would have to burn through half my army to reach him." "Will he?" "Probably." Draven stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The room suddenly felt much smaller. "We need to talk." "About?" "About what happens next. About the bond. About the fact that you're sitting in the center of a war you didn't choose and don't understand." Calith stood, ignoring the way her injured hand throbbed. "Then explain it to me. All of it. No more cryptic warnings or half-truths. If I'm going to die for this, I deserve to know why." Draven studied her for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable. Then he nodded and sat on the edge of her bed, the only furniture in the room besides a small table. He looked strange there, this massive warrior perched on something so ordinary. "The bond between us," he began slowly, "is ancient magic. Older than the pacts, older than the kingdoms. It's meant to create perfect pairs, complementary strengths, balanced weaknesses. When two souls are bonded, they become greater than the sum of their parts." Sounds romantic. It's not. It's brutal. Bonded pairs feel each other's pain, share each other's power, can sense each other across any distance. If one dies, the other... He paused. "The other usually follows. Not immediately, but the loss breaks something fundamental. Most don't survive more than a year." Calith's stomach twisted. "So if the Shadow King kills me, he cripples me, maybe permanently. And without me, the alliance holding the northern territories together collapses. A dozen pacts descend into civil war. Thousands die." His jaw clenched. "You're not just a target, Calith. You're a weapon pointed at everything I've built." "I didn't ask for this." "I know." Something softened in his expression. "Neither did I. But here we are." "Why me?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Of all the wolves in the world, why did the bond choose me? I'm nobody. I was cast out, called worthless. I have no power, no lineage, no—" "Stop." Draven's hand caught her chin, tilting her face up. "The bond doesn't choose based on status or bloodline. It chooses based on soul. And your soul—" His thumb brushed across her cheek. "It called to mind like nothing else in this world. The moment you touched my son, the moment you made that impossible choice to save him, the bond recognized what you are." "What am I?" "Stronger than you know. Braver than you believe." His eyes searched hers. "The bond doesn't make mistakes, Calith, even if we don't understand it yet." The intensity of his gaze made her chest tight. She pulled back, putting distance between them. What do we do now? We prepare. The Shadow King won't wait long to make his next move. He'll come with everything he has. And then? Then we fight. And we hope we're strong enough to survive. A knock interrupted them. The silver-haired warrior from before, Draven had called her Sarah, stepped inside. My lord, the scouts have returned. You need to hear this. Draven rose immediately, all tenderness replaced by cold command. Report. The Shadowborn are gathering at the Broken Spire, that cursed ruin 20 miles north. But they're not preparing for another assault. They're building something. A ritual circle, our scouts think. Massive. It's taking dozens of them to construct it. Kalith felt ice slide down her spine. What kind of ritual? Sarah's pale eyes flicked to her. The kind that requires a sacrifice, a specific one. They want to use her, Draven said flatly, to break the bond. Not just break it. According to our sources, they want to corrupt it. Turn it into a conduit for the Shadow King's power. If they succeed, he could use the bond to drain you, my lord, kill you from the inside out while you're helpless to stop it. The room fell silent. How long until the ritual is ready? Draven asked. 2 days. Maybe 3. Can we destroy it before then? Not without a full assault, and the spire is naturally defensible. We'd lose hundreds trying to take it. Draven's hand curled into a fist. Then we fortify here, triple the guards. No one gets in or out without my explicit permission. My lord, Sarah hesitated. There's something else. One of our scouts didn't return. Maven. She was the closest to the spire when she just vanished. No trace. No blood. Nothing. The Shadow King took her. Likely. Then she's already dead or corrupted. Either way, she's a threat now. Draven's voice was ice. If she approaches the fortress, kill her on sight. Sarah bowed and left. Kalith stood frozen, trying to process everything. 2 days. She had 2 days before dark magic turned her into a weapon against the one person who'd shown her protection. I should leave, she said quietly. No. If I'm not here, they can't use me. They'll hunt you, track you down. The bond makes you easy to find for anyone with the right magic. At least here you have an army between you and them. An army that's going to die protecting me. An army that's going to die anyway if the Shadow King wins. Draven closed the distance between them. You don't get to sacrifice yourself, Kalith. Not while I'm still breathing. You don't own me. The bond says otherwise. The bond is... She stopped, because she didn't know how to finish that sentence. Unwanted? Terrifying? The only thing keeping her alive? Draven's expression softened slightly. I know this isn't fair. I know you didn't choose any of this, but running won't save you. It'll just make you easier prey. Before she could respond, pain exploded through the mark. Kalith gasped, her knees buckling. It felt like someone had driven a spike through her palm, white-hot and searing. Draven caught her before she hit the ground, his own face twisted in shared agony. What's happening? She managed through gritted teeth. The ritual. They've started early. His arms tightened around her. They're testing it, seeing if they can reach you through the bond. The pain intensified, and Kalith screamed. It wasn't just her hand anymore. It was spreading, racing up her arm, into her chest, wrapping around her heart like barbed wire. Make it stop, she begged. I can't, Draven's voice cracked. I don't know how. Sarah burst back into the room. My lord, we have a problem. Someone broke through the perimeter. Multiple someones. They're inside the fortress. How? We don't know. One moment the walls were clear, the next, an explosion rocked the building. Draven laid Kalith on the bed, his hands framing her face. Stay here. Don't leave this room. You can't. Stay. Here. The command in his voice was absolute. Then he was gone, Sarah following. Kalith lay there, gasping through the pain, the mark burning like a brand. She could hear fighting outside, shouts, screams, the clash of steel. The fortress was under attack. The pain in her hand suddenly cut off, leaving her dizzy and gasping. In the silence that followed, she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. The door swung open. Torvin stood there. Kalith's breath caught. Her former alpha looked different. His eyes were wrong, glowing with that same sick green light as the Shadowborn. Dark veins spiderwebbed across his skin, pulsing with corrupt magic. "Hello, Calith," he said, and his voice had an echo to it, like two people speaking at once. "Time to come home." She scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. "You're working with them, with the Shadow King." "I'm surviving. Something you taught me, actually." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You were right to be afraid of being worthless, because that's exactly what you are without power. So I found power, real power." "By selling your soul?" "By making a choice. The Shadow King offered me immortality, strength beyond measure, dominion over territories that would make me greater than any alpha in history. All he wanted in return was—" Torvin smiled, and it was a horrible thing. "You. Draven will kill you. Draven is currently fighting 30 Shadowborn led into his fortress. By the time he realizes it's a distraction, we'll be long gone." He moved fast, faster than any normal shifter. His hand closed around her throat, lifting her off the ground. Calith clawed at his arm, but it was like fighting stone. "The Shadow King has been very clear," Torvin said conversationally. "You need to be alive for the ritual, but he didn't say anything about unharmed." He slammed her against the wall hard enough to crack the stone. Stars exploded across her vision. "This is for all the years I wasted training you," he said. "For believing you might be worth something." He hit her, once, twice, methodical and brutal. Calith tasted blood, felt ribs crack. The mark on her hand blazed with heat. "Fight back!" the Bond screamed. "Use me!" But her broken hand was useless, her body battered, her mind fracturing under the pain and fear. Torvin dragged her toward the door. "Time to go." "No," she gasped. "You don't get a choice." "I said no." The power erupted from her, not from her hand this time, but from her chest, from the Bond itself. Silver light exploded outward, slamming Torvin backward. He hit the opposite wall and dropped, stunned. Calith collapsed to her knees, gasping. The power had drained her completely, left her hollow and shaking. But it had worked. Torvin rose slowly, green fire burning in his eyes. Impressive, but not enough. He lunged. The door exploded inward. Draven stood in the wreckage, covered in blood and fury, his eyes pure gold. Behind him, the hallway was littered with Shadowborn corpses. He looked at Torvin, then at Calith's battered face, at the blood on the floor. "You touched her," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Torvin backed up. "Draven, we can talk about this." Draven shifted. His wolf form was massive, black as midnight, radiating power that made the air shimmer. He crossed the room in one leap, jaws closing around Torvin's throat. The former alpha screamed, a sound that cut off wetly. Calith looked away. She heard the sounds of violence, of flesh tearing, of bone breaking. When silence finally fell, she forced herself to look back. Torvin was dead. Very dead. Draven shifted back to human form, still covered in blood. More now. He crossed to Calith, his hands gentle despite the violence he'd just committed. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "I should have been here. Should have protected you. You were fighting an army. I should have been here." His hands were shaking as they touched her face, cataloging her injuries. "I failed you. I'm alive. That's what matters." Barely. His jaw clenched. "This is my fault. All of it. If I'd never bonded with you—" "Don't!" Calith caught his hand with her good one. "Don't you dare blame yourself for this." Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of something deeper than a forced magical connection. Sarah appeared in the doorway. "My lord, we've cleared the fortress, but we lost 12 warriors, and—" She hesitated. "Maven returned, or what's left of her. She's asking to speak with you." "Is she corrupted?" "We're not sure. She looks wrong, but she's coherent, insistent." Draven looked torn, his eyes flicking between Calith and the door. "Go," Calith said. "I'll be fine. You're barely conscious, and Maven might have information. Go." He left reluctantly, Sarah following. Calith sat alone in the blood-stained room, her body screaming with pain, her mind racing. Torvin had been corrupted. How many others? How deep did the Shadow King's influence run? A sound made her turn. Her sister Marin stood in the doorway. Calith's breath caught. She hadn't seen Marin since the exile, 8 months that felt like a lifetime. Her sister looked the same, still beautiful in that cold way, her dark hair braided back, her eyes sharp. "Marin?" Calith's voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" "I came with the Northern Ridge Pack. When I heard you were here..." Marin stepped inside, her expression unreadable. "I needed to see if it was true, if you'd really bonded with the Alpha King." "It's true." Marin stared at the mark on Calith's bandaged hand. "Unbelievable. You, the worthless one, bonded to the most powerful shifter alive. I didn't ask for it. No one ever does." Marin moved closer. "Do you know what the pack is saying? They're calling it a miracle, a sign. The rejected wolf chosen by fate itself. The pack threw me away. They were wrong." Marin's voice was soft. "I was wrong. I should have fought for you, should have stood up to Torvin. But I was afraid." "Of what?" "Of being cast out too. Of losing everything." Marin's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry, Calith. I'm so sorry." The words Calith had wanted to hear for 8 months. The apology she'd dreamed about during cold nights alone in the wilderness. So why did it feel wrong? "How did you get in here?" she asked slowly. "The fortress is on lockdown." Marin smiled, and it was her sister's smile, familiar and warm. "I told them I was your family, that I needed to see you. They let me through." "They wouldn't. Draven's orders were explicit. No one in or out." "Calith, you're being paranoid. Show me your eyes." "What?" "Your eyes. Show me." Marin's smile faded. For just a moment something flickered in her gaze, something green and sick and wrong. Then it was gone, and her sister's familiar brown eyes stared back. "You've been through trauma," Marin said gently. "You're seeing threats everywhere. It's understandable." But Calith had seen it, that flash of corruption. "You're working for him," she whispered. "The Shadow King. Don't be ridiculous. How long? How long have you been corrupted?" Marin's expression changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "Since the night Torvin cast you out. The Shadow King came to me in the darkness, offered me everything you lost: power, status, purpose. You sold yourself. I upgraded myself." Marin circled her slowly, predator to prey. "And now I'm here to collect the bounty on your head. The Shadow King wants you alive, but he didn't say anything about comfortable." Calith tried to stand, but her battered body wouldn't cooperate. Draven is busy with Maven, who, by the way, is also one of ours. She's feeding him false information right now, sending him north while we take you south to the Spire." Marin pulled a silver collar from her belt, the kind used to suppress a shifter's power. "This won't hurt. Much." She moved to snap it around Calith's neck. The mark blazed white-hot. Power exploded from it, throwing Marin backward. But this time the power didn't stop. It kept building, pouring through Calith in waves that made her scream. Her vision went white, her body convulsing. Through the haze, she heard Marin laughing. "Perfect. You're activating it yourself, making it easier." "Activating what?" Then Calith felt it. Something inside her, wrapped around the bond like a parasite. Dark magic, corrupt and vile. It had been planted there during the attack. Maybe when Torven touched her. Maybe when the ritual tested the connection. And now it was hatching. The corruption spread through her like poison, racing along the bond's pathways, reaching for Draven on the other end. She could feel him distant, confused, suddenly in pain as the darkness touched him. She tried to fight it, to push it back, but it was too strong. "That's it," Marin crooned. "Let it spread. Soon you'll be ours completely. And through you, we'll have the Alpha King himself." "No," Calith gasped. "Yes. It's already done. You're the weapon, sister. You always were." Calith's mind raced through the agony. If the corruption reached Draven fully, it would kill him, would cripple him, would destroy everything, unless... The thought formed slowly, terribly, unless the bond was severed first. "There's a way to stop it," Marin said, as if reading her thoughts. "Submit to the Shadow King. Let him complete the corruption. Become his willingly. Then the pain stops. Draven lives, as our prisoner, but alive, and you, she smiled, you become powerful beyond imagining. Never. Then watch him die. Watch the bond kill him from the inside while you're helpless. Calith could feel Draven through the connection now, fighting, trying to reach her, but the corruption was spreading faster than he could cleanse it. She had minutes, maybe less. She looked down at her broken hand, at the mark burning with corrupted light. Then she made a choice. She grabbed the silver collar from where it had fallen. "What are you doing?" Marin demanded. "Saving him." Calith snapped the collar around her own neck. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The collar suppressed all shifter magic, including the bond. It cut her off from Draven completely, severed the connection, stopped the corruption's spread. But it also trapped the corruption inside her. She screamed as dark magic flooded her system with nowhere to go. It wrapped around her bones, invaded her blood, sank claws into her soul. The collar kept her from shifting, from accessing Draven's power, from fighting back. She was drowning in darkness with no way to surface. "You idiot," Marin breathed. "You just trapped yourself." "Better than killing him," Calith gasped. "The Shadow King is going to be so pleased. You've done half the work for him." Through the haze of agony, Calith heard running footsteps. Draven burst into the room. Maven's warning apparently delivered. His eyes found her on the floor, the collar around her neck, the corruption turning her veins black beneath her skin. "No," he said. "No, no, no." He rushed forward, reaching for the collar. "Don't," Calith managed. "It's the only thing stopping the spread to you." "I don't care." "I do." She looked up at him, her vision already darkening. "The corruption inside me. If you remove the collar, it'll flow back. Kill you. Then we'll find another way. Marin laughed. "There is no other way. She's ours now. And when we complete the ritual at the spire, she'll be the weapon that destroys you both." Draven's eyes flashed to her. In one smooth motion, he drew a blade and threw it. Marin dodged, but barely. "You can't kill me. I'm all that's keeping the corruption stable. Kill me, and it detonates. Takes your precious bond with it. Takes her." She was right. Calith could feel it. The dark magic tied to Marin's life force, waiting. "Leave," Draven said, his voice death itself. "Before I decide her life is worth the risk." Marin smiled. 2 days, Alpha King. 2 days until the ritual is complete, and we drag her to the spire. You can watch while we break her, while we make her into something that will end you." She vanished into shadows. Literal shadows, melting into darkness. Draven fell to his knees beside Calith, his hands hovering over her but not touching, as if afraid contact would hurt her more. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why would you do this?" "Because you have a son," she whispered. "An army. A kingdom. I'm just worthless, remember?" "You're not. You were never—" His hand touched her face gently. "You're everything." The corruption was spreading despite the collar. She could feel it. Slower now, but inevitable. "I'm dying," she said quietly. "No." "Draven. No." He leaned close, his forehead touching hers. "You don't get to give up, you hear me? You don't get to sacrifice yourself like this." "Don't have a choice." "There's always a choice." His hand covered the mark on her palm, and she felt warmth, real warmth, fighting against the cold spreading through her. "I will tear the Shadow King apart. I will burn the spire to ash. I will move heaven and earth to save you. Might not be enough. Then I'll die trying." Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "My lord," Maven just transformed, fully corrupted. "She killed 3 warriors before we brought her down. And she said—" Sarah hesitated. "She said they have a dozen more like her inside our ranks. We don't know who. The fortress was compromised from within. The Shadow King had played them perfectly. And Calith was the key to everything, the weapon they needed to complete their victory." Draven's arms tightened around her, but she could feel him trembling, not from fear, from rage and helplessness. "Get me to the ritual chamber," Calith said. "What?" "Your mages. They can slow this, maybe even stop it." They can't remove the collar without killing us both. Then they stabilize. Buy time. She looked up at him. 2 days until the spire ritual. That's 2 days to find another solution. It was a desperate plan, probably doomed, but it was all they had. Draven lifted her carefully, and she felt the moment his control cracked, the way his breath hitched, the way his arms shook. The most powerful alpha in the world, reduced to this, to helplessness, to watching someone he was bonded to slowly die. "I've got you," he whispered against her hair. "I've got you." But they both knew the truth. The darkness was winning. And in 2 days, when they dragged her to the spire, Kalith would become the weapon that destroyed everything she'd tried to save. The ritual chamber was deep beneath the fortress, carved from stone so old it predated written history. Runes covered every surface, glowing faintly with protective magic that made Kalith's corrupted skin crawl. 3 mages waited there, elderly wolves whose power hummed in the air like electricity. Draven laid her on the central altar, his hands lingering on her shoulders before he forced himself to step back. The eldest mage, a woman named Thera, with silver hair braided to her waist, approached cautiously. Her eyes widened when she saw the black veins spreading beneath Kalith's skin. "Shadow corruption," she breathed. "Advanced stage, and bound by a suppression collar." She looked at Draven. "My lord, this is beyond our skill. We can slow it, perhaps, but—" "Then slow it," Draven commanded. "Buy us time. The collar must stay on. If we remove it, the corruption flows back through the bond, kills us both." Thera's face was grim. "Then we work around it. But you should know, every hour she wears that collar, the corruption digs deeper. Eventually, there will be nothing left to save." "How long? 2 days? Maybe less." The same timeline as the ritual at the spire. The Shadow King had planned this perfectly. "Do what you can," Draven said. The mages moved with practiced efficiency, drawing additional runes around the altar, burning herbs that filled the chamber with acrid smoke. Kalith felt their magic pressing against the corruption like fingers probing a wound. The pain was excruciating. "The darkness is anchored to her life force," one of the younger mages said, "and to something external, someone controlling it remotely." "Marin," Kalith gasped. "My sister. She's the anchor." "If we kill the anchor," the young mage began. "The corruption detonates," Thera interrupted. "Standard Shadowborn trap. No easy solutions here." They worked for hours, chanting in languages Kalith didn't recognize, pouring power into containment spells. By the time they finished, the black veins had stopped spreading, frozen in place like ice. But they hadn't receded. "That's the best we can do," Thera said, exhaustion evident in her voice. "The corruption is stable, but not banished. It's waiting." "For what?" Draven asked. "For the ritual at the spire. They'll use the circle to amplify the darkness, force it to consume her completely. Then they'll have full control." "What happens if we don't bring her to the spire?" "The corruption will eventually break through our containment. Maybe in 2 days, maybe in 3. Either way, the result is the same. She becomes Shadowborn, loses herself completely, and the bond becomes a weapon against you." Draven's jaw clenched. "So we're damned either way." "Not necessarily." Thera moved closer to Kalith, studying the mark beneath the bandages. "The bond is powerful. More powerful than most magic, including shadow corruption. If she could access it fully, if the collar wasn't suppressing it, she might be able to fight the darkness from within." "But removing the collar kills her," Draven said. "Not if she's strong enough to contain the backlash, to turn the corruption back on itself before it spreads." Thera met his eyes. "It's possible, barely, but it would require strength beyond anything a normal wolf possesses." "She's not normal," Draven said quietly. "The bond chose her for a reason." Kalith wanted to laugh at the confidence in his voice, but her body hurt too much. "I'm the one they threw away, remember? Worthless." "Stop saying that." Draven was suddenly beside her, his hand covering hers carefully. "You saved my son when anyone else would have left him to die. You bonded with me when it should have been impossible. You've survived exile, assassination attempts, and now shadow corruption. You are the strongest wolf I've ever met. Start believing it." His words hit something deep inside her, that small wounded part that had internalized every insult, every rejection, every moment of being told she wasn't enough. Maybe they'd been wrong. Maybe she was stronger than any of them knew. There might be another option, the youngest mage said hesitantly. It's dangerous. Probably insane, but say it, Draven commanded. What if we don't fight the ritual? What if we use it? Everyone stared at him. Explain, Thera said. The Spire ritual is designed to amplify and complete the corruption, yes? To turn her into their weapon. But rituals are just channeled power. If we could reverse the flow at the critical moment, turn the amplification back on itself, the ritual would consume the corruption instead of spreading it. That's suicide, Thera said. She'd be at the center of the Spire, surrounded by Shadowborn, with the Shadow King himself controlling the ritual. The moment she tries to resist, they'll kill her, the young mage finished. Yes, unless she has help from the inside. Sarah, who'd been standing guard by the door, stepped forward. You're suggesting we infiltrate the Spire, let them think they've won, then strike when they're vulnerable. The Spire is a fortress, Draven said. We'd need an army to take it. Or a small team, Sarah countered. Fast, quiet, in and out before they know what's happening. They'd see us coming. Not if we came from the inside. Sarah's eyes gleamed. My lord, we have 12 corrupted wolves in our ranks. Maven was one. We don't know who the others are. But if we could identify them, turn Shadowborn? Thera looked skeptical. That's never been done. Because no one's ever tried. The young mage was excited now. But if the bond is as powerful as we think, if she could push back against the corruption even slightly, she might be able to sever the Shadow King's control over the corrupted wolves. Free them. Or drive them deeper into madness, Thera warned. Kalith listened to them debate, her mind racing despite the pain. It was an insane plan, suicidal, but it was also the only chance they had. I'll do it, she said. Everyone turned to look at her. You'll do what? Draven asked. The ritual, the reversal, all of it. She tried to sit up, gasping as the corruption flared. But I need to learn control first. The bond, the power. I can't just throw magic around and hope it works. You have 2 days, Thera said gently. Learning to control bond magic takes years. Then I learn fast. Draven's hand tightened on hers. Kalith, do you have a better plan? Silence. I didn't think so. She met his eyes. Teach me, please. If I'm going to die anyway, let me die fighting. Something shifted in his expression, grief and pride and fierce determination. You're not going to die. I won't let you. You can't promise that. Watch me. Over the next 36 hours, Kalith learned what it meant to be bonded to the Alpha King. Draven pushed her relentlessly, teaching her to access the bond without the collar suppressing it, which meant working around the collar's edges, finding the thin threads of connection still intact. It was like trying to breathe through a straw while drowning. They started small. Feeling his presence through the bond, sensing his emotions, the constant worry, the simmering rage at the Shadow King, the growing attachment to her that he tried to hide. You're not hiding it very well, she gasped during a break, her body shaking from exertion. Hiding what? The fact that this bond means more to you than just political alliance. He was quiet for a long moment. The bond created the connection, but what I feel for you, that's separate. That's choice. You barely know me. I know you saved my son. I know you sacrificed yourself to protect me. I know you're fighting corruption that would break anyone else. His hand cupped her face. I know enough. Then they were back to training, and Kalith learned to push power through the bond's remaining threads. Not much. The collar prevented anything large, but enough. Enough to feel Draven's strength flowing into her, steadying her, keeping the corruption at bay. When they remove the collar at the Spire, he said, the backlash will be immediate. You'll have seconds, maybe less, to contain it before it consumes you. How? By being stronger than the darkness, by refusing to let it win. His eyes burned into hers. You've spent your whole life being told you're weak, worthless. But that was a lie, Kalith. The bond doesn't choose the weak. It chooses survivors, fighters, those who refuse to break no matter how hard the world pushes. His words kindled something inside her, a tiny flame of belief that maybe, just maybe, she was strong enough. Meanwhile, Sarah worked to identify the corrupted wolves. It was brutal, methodical work, testing each warrior with silver and sacred herbs, watching for the telltale signs. By the end of the first day, they'd found 8. They're still functional, Sarah reported. Still following orders. The corruption hasn't fully taken them yet. Can we use them? Draven asked. If Kalith can sever their connection to the Shadow King, yes, they'd be free, loyal again. And if she can't, we kill them before they become weapons. The corrupted wolves were kept in reinforced cells, confused and terrified. Kalith visited them on the second morning, studying the green light in their eyes, the black veins beneath their skin. They looked like her, felt like her. One of them, a young male named Fen, met her gaze through the bars. "You're the bonded one," he said. His voice had that same double echo as Torvin's had. "The weapon. I'm trying not to be. Good luck with that. The darkness is patient. It waits until you're weak, then it strikes." He smiled, and it was wrong. "I can feel him, the Shadow King. He's in my head, whispering, promising power if I just let go. Stop fighting." "Don't listen." "Why not? He's offering everything I ever wanted. Strength, purpose, an end to the fear." "At the cost of your soul." Fenn's smile faded. For just a moment his eyes cleared, normal brown instead of sick green. "Help me," he whispered. "Please, I don't want to become this." Kalith reached through the bars, taking his hand. The bond flared and she felt it, the thread connecting Fen to the Shadow King, thin and dark, wrapped around his consciousness like a snake. She pulled on the bond's power, letting it flow through her into him. The thread resisted. Then it screamed, a psychic shriek that made them both gasp. And it shattered. Fen collapsed, his eyes rolling back. When he looked up again, they were brown, fully brown. The corruption was still there, the black veins still visible, but the Shadow King's control was gone. "What?" Fen breathed. "What did you do?" "Freed you." Kalith's hand was shaking. "Can you still feel him?" "No, nothing. It's just quiet." Tears streamed down his face. "Thank you. Thank you." Word spread quickly. By midday, Kalith had freed all 8 corrupted wolves. It drained her completely, left her barely able to stand, but it proved the theory. She could fight the Shadow King's influence, could turn his weapons against him. 4 more still unidentified, Sarah said. "They're hiding better." "We'll find them," Draven said. "We have to." But time was running out. The Spire ritual would begin at sunset the next day. They had perhaps 20 hours. Draven gathered his war council in the strategy room. Sarah, Thera, the freed wolves, and Kalith. A map of the Spire and surrounding territory covered the table. "We move at dawn," Draven said. "Small strike team. Sarah leads. 10 of our best warriors plus the freed 8. They know the Shadowborn's tactics, can move among them without raising immediate alarm." "What about the Shadow King himself?" Sarah asked. "I'll handle him." "My lord, with respect, if the corruption spreads through the bond during combat, then Kalith pulls it back. We've been training for this." Kalith studied the map, her mind working. "The ritual circle is here?" She pointed to the Spire's central chamber. "Yes, large enough for 100 participants. They'll have guards, reinforcements, the Shadow King himself." "What if we gave them what they want?" Everyone looked at her. "They want me at the center of the ritual. Want to complete the corruption, so we let them think they're winning, let them bring me in, start the ritual. Then, you reverse it from the inside," the young mage finished. "Use their own power against them. While we attack from the outside," Sarah added. "Create chaos, divide their attention." "It's still suicide," Thera said. "You'd be alone in the ritual circle, surrounded by enemies, fighting corruption and reversing a dark ritual simultaneously." "Not alone." Draven's hand found Kalith's. "The bond works both ways. I can channel power to her, keep her anchored, which leaves you vulnerable." "I don't care." They spent hours refining the plan, identifying weaknesses, preparing contingencies. By the time they finished, the sun was setting, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of red and gold. Kalith stood on the fortress wall, watching the light fade, Draven beside her. "Are you afraid?" he asked quietly. "Terrified." Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He turned to face her. But don't let it control you. Tomorrow, when we walk into that spire, you need to remember who you are. Not the exile, not the worthless one. The wolf who saved a dying child, who bonded with a king, who fought an army and survived. I almost didn't survive. But you did. That's what matters. His hand touched her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. I need you to promise me something. What? If things go wrong tomorrow, if the ritual starts to consume you and there's no way out, you let me sever the bond. Let me cut the connection before the corruption uses it to kill us both. No. Kalith, I said no. If I die, you keep fighting. You protect Lior. You hold the kingdom together. You don't give up just because I'm gone. You don't understand. If the bond breaks while you're alive, it will destroy me. Not immediately, but eventually. I'll lose the will to fight, to lead, to live. Then don't let it break. She met his eyes. We survive together. Or we don't survive at all. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and fierce, tasting of fear and determination and something deeper. The bond sang between them, amplifying every sensation until Kalith felt like she might shatter from the intensity. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. I will burn the world to keep you safe, he whispered. I know. But tomorrow, I need you to let me fight. I will, I promise. They stood together as night fell, preparing for the battle that would decide everything. Dawn came cold and clear. The strike team assembled in the courtyard, 20 warriors, grim-faced and heavily armed. The 8 freed wolves wore shadow-born markings, ready to infiltrate. Sarah commanded the group with quiet authority. Draven pulled Kalith aside before they left. Last chance to change your mind, he said. Not a chance. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Then he removed a chain from around his neck, a small pendant carved from black stone. This was my mate's, Lior's mother. She wore it into every battle, said it brought luck. He fastened it around Kalith's neck. I'm not her, Kalith said softly. No, you're not. But you're just as important to me. Maybe more. He touched the pendant gently. Come back to me. I'll try. Don't try, do. They rode north as the sun climbed higher, the spire growing visible on the horizon, a twisted tower of black stone that seemed to drink in light. Dark clouds gathered around it, unnatural and threatening. 2 miles out, they separated. Sarah's team circled east. Draven's smaller group, just him, Kalith, and 4 elite guards, continued straight toward the main entrance. They'll see us coming, one guard said nervously. That's the point, Draven replied. We're not hiding. We're delivering what they want. As they approached, Shadowborn emerged from the ruins, dozens of them, weapons drawn. But they didn't attack. They simply watched, waiting. Then Merrin stepped forward, her smile triumphant. Brother, she said mockingly to Draven, how kind of you to deliver our weapon personally. I'm here to negotiate, Draven said coldly. You have nothing to negotiate with. I have her. He gestured to Kalith. The bond intact. The corruption stable. Everything you need for your ritual. In exchange, you release the wolves you've corrupted. All of them. And you leave the northern territories forever. Merrin laughed. Why would we do that when we can simply take her and keep everything else? Because, if you try, I'll kill her myself before you can complete the ritual. The bluff hung in the air. Merrin studied them, her eyes calculating. You wouldn't. The bond would kill you. Try me. A new voice cut through the tension, deep and resonant, echoing strangely. Enough! The Shadow King emerged from the spire entrance. Up close, he was even more terrifying. His form seemed to shift and flicker, not quite solid, his eyes burning with green fire. Power radiated from him in waves that made the air shimmer. Alpha King, he said, inclining his head mockingly, you've brought me a gift. How thoughtful. This isn't a gift. It's a trade. I don't trade. I take. The Shadow King's eyes fixed on Kalith. Come here, child. The corruption inside her responded instantly, pulling her forward. She fought it, but the collar prevented her from accessing the bond's strength. Her feet moved without her permission. Draven grabbed her arm, holding her back. "You want her?" he growled. "You go through me first." The Shadow King smiled. "As you wish." He attacked with speed that shouldn't have been possible, crossing the distance in a blink. Draven met him head-on, the two forces colliding with a shockwave that shattered stone. They fought with brutal efficiency, claws and fangs and raw power. But the Shadow King was stronger. Kaleth watched in horror as Draven was driven back, bleeding from a dozen wounds, his strength failing. The Shadow King was toying with him, drawing it out. "Stop!" she screamed. "I'll come willingly. Just stop hurting him." The Shadow King paused, Draven pinned beneath him. A trade after all. How delightful. "Kaleth, no!" Draven gasped. "Let him go," she said. "I'll cooperate with the ritual. No resistance. Just let him live." "Done." The Shadow King released Draven, who collapsed in the snow, too injured to rise. Shadowborn grabbed him, binding him with silver chains. "Bring her to the circle," the Shadow King commanded. Marin stepped forward, removing the suppression collar with practiced ease. The moment it came off, agony exploded through Kaleth. The corruption surged, no longer contained, flooding her system. But so did the bond, Draven's strength pouring into her, fighting the darkness. She gasped, falling to her knees. "Easy," Marin crooned. "Save your strength. You'll need it for what comes next." They dragged her into the spire, down spiral stairs slick with ice, into a massive chamber carved from living rock. The ritual circle dominated the space, intricate runes drawn in what looked like blood, candles burning with green flame. They placed her at the center. Shadowborn gathered around the circle's edge, 50, maybe more. The Shadow King took his position at the northern point, his hands raised. "Begin!" he commanded. The chanting started low, building in volume and intensity. The runes began to glow, power flowing through them, converging on Kaleth. The corruption inside her responded, growing stronger, spreading faster. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. Kaleth closed her eyes, reaching for the bond, for Draven's strength, for the power they'd trained her to access. "Are you with me?" she thought. Draven's presence flooded her mind, warm and fierce, always. The ritual reached its peak. The Shadow King's voice boomed across the chamber. "Let the corruption complete. Let the weapon be forged." Kaleth felt the darkness trying to consume her, to erase everything she was. She refused. Instead of fighting the ritual's power, she grabbed it, pulled it into herself. Let it amplify not the corruption, but the bond. Silver light exploded from her hands. The Shadow King's chanting faltered. "What?" Kaleth stood, her whole body blazing with bond light. The corruption was still there, still fighting, but she was stronger, fed by the ritual's own power, channeled through the bond. She was unstoppable. "You made a mistake," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "You built this ritual to amplify, but you never specified what it would amplify." She reached out with the bond, finding every thread of corruption the Shadow King had planted. In her, in the other wolves, in the very stones of the spire, and she burned them all. The Shadowborn screamed as their connections shattered. Some collapsed, others fled. The Shadow King himself staggered, his form flickering. "Impossible," he gasped. "Not impossible." Kaleth walked toward him, light blazing from her hands. "Just unexpected. You saw a worthless exile, a broken wolf. You never saw what I really am." "What's that?" "A survivor." She hit him with everything she had, bondlight and fury and the accumulated power of the entire ritual. The Shadow King tried to block it, but he'd put too much of himself into the corruption. When it shattered, so did he. He screamed, a sound that shook the spire to its foundations. His form began to dissolve, darkness bleeding away like smoke. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I'll return. Not today." Kaleth pushed one final surge of power, and the Shadow King exploded into ash and shadow that the wind scattered instantly. Silence fell. Then the spire began to collapse. Without the Shadow King's power holding it together, the ancient structure was falling apart. Stone cracked. The ceiling groaned. Kaleth ran. She found Draven still in chains, Sarah's team having just reached him. Together they fled the collapsing spire, the Shadowborn scattering in all directions, their master dead, their corruption broken. They made it outside just as the spire fell, crumbling into rubble and dust. Calith collapsed in the snow, exhausted beyond measure. The bond still humming, but stable now. Clean. Draven dropped beside her, pulling her into his arms despite his injuries. "You did it," he breathed. "You actually did it." "We did it." She looked up at him. "Together." Around them, the freed wolves were celebrating. The Shadowborn fled or dead. Victory. Impossible, miraculous victory. Marin was found among the rubble, alive but broken. The corruption had left her when the Shadow King died, but the memory of what she'd done remained. She looked at Calith with empty eyes. "You were always stronger than me," she whispered. "I just couldn't admit it." Calith had no words, so she simply walked away. The journey back to the fortress took 2 days. By the time they arrived, word had spread. The exile who'd been called worthless had destroyed the Shadow King, had saved the Alpha King, had proven every doubter wrong. The warriors who'd once dismissed her now bowed as she passed, and Calith Vorn, for the first time in her life, walked with her head held high. The fortress gates opened to cheers. Calith wasn't prepared for it. The sound of hundreds of voices raised in celebration. Warriors lining the walls, banners raised high. They weren't cheering for Draven, though he rode beside her. They were cheering for her, the exile, the worthless one, the wolf who'd saved them all. She looked at Draven, uncertain. He smiled, though exhaustion lined his face from wounds still healing. "Let them see you," he said quietly. "Let them know who you really are." She straightened in her saddle, fighting the instinct to shrink away. The mark on her palm, clean now, free of corruption, pulsed with warmth, a reminder of what she'd survived, what she'd overcome. They rode through the fortress to the great hall, where more warriors waited. Sarah stood at the entrance, her silver hair braided for ceremony, her expression unreadable. She dropped to one knee as Calith dismounted. "My lady," she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "The Shadow King is destroyed. The corruption is broken. We owe you our lives." Around her, every warrior knelt. Calith's throat tightened. I don't." "You are," Draven said, dismounting beside her. His hand found hers steady and warm. "Accept it." So she did. She stood before them, this army that had fought beside her, and nodded. "Rise, all of you. We won this together." But as they stood, she saw the truth in their eyes. They hadn't just won a battle. They'd witnessed something impossible, an exile bonded to their king, destroying an enemy that had terrorized them for years. She'd become something more than a survivor. She'd become a symbol. Inside the great hall, a fire roared in the massive hearth. Draven's council gathered, advisors, generals, pack leaders from allied territories. They all turned as Calith entered, and she felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. "The Shadow King is dead," Draven announced, his voice carrying authority that silenced all whispers. "His spire has fallen. The Shadowborn who survive are scattered, broken, no longer a threat. This war is over." Applause erupted, but it was tempered by exhaustion. They'd paid a heavy price. Warriors lost, territories damaged, trust shattered by the corrupted wolves in their midst. One of the pack leaders, an older male named Garrick with scars crossing his face, stepped forward. "My lord, we must address the matter of succession. With the threat eliminated, the kingdom requires stability, a clear line of power." "I'm aware," Draven said. "The boy, Lior, is your heir, but he's young. And you," Garrick's eyes flicked to Calith. "Your bond complicates matters." "How?" Draven's voice went cold. "She's an exile, cast out by her pack. No bloodline, no territory, no—" "Careful," Draven interrupted. "You're describing the woman who just saved all our lives." "With respect, my lord, saving lives doesn't change lineage. The other packs are already asking questions. If you formalize this bond, if you make her your queen, there will be resistance." Calith felt ice slide down her spine. Queen. The word felt foreign, impossible. She'd spent her life being told she was worthless, and now they were discussing making her royalty? "Then let them resist," Draven said. "The bond is formalized. It was the moment it formed. She's mine, and I'm hers. Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me directly." Garrick paled slightly. No one challenged Draven. Not anymore. Of course, my lord. I meant no disrespect. I'm simply preparing you for the political reality. I understand politics just fine. Draven's hand tightened on Kalith's. What you're really asking is whether I'm willing to risk my alliance network for an exile. The answer is yes. Without question. The council shifted uncomfortably. Kalith could see the calculations in their eyes. The alliances that might fracture, the territories that might rebel, the carefully balanced power structure that her presence threatened. I should go, she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Kalith, Draven began. You heard them. I'm a political liability. The Pax won't accept me. And if they revolt because of me, all the people who died fighting the Shadow King died for nothing. They died fighting darkness. They won. That's what matters. Is it? She pulled her hand free from his, ignoring the way the bond protested the separation. I'm not stupid, Draven. I know how power works. You need alliances, support, legitimacy. I can't give you any of that. You can give me strength, partnership, someone who understands what it means to fight when the world has given up on you. His eyes burned into hers. I don't need political convenience. I need you. The words hung in the air, raw and honest. Garrett cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. Draven's voice was absolute. This concerns the entire council, the entire kingdom. So let me be clear. Kalith Vorn is my bonded mate. That makes her queen in everything but title. And if anyone, pack leader, advisor, or ally, cannot accept that, they're welcome to leave now. Silence. No one moved. Good, Draven said. Then let's discuss what actually matters. Rebuilding what the Shadow King destroyed. The meeting lasted hours. They cataloged losses, planned reconstruction, sent messages to allied territories. Through it all, Kalith sat beside Draven, feeling increasingly out of place. These were matters of kingdoms and politics, things she knew nothing about. But when they discussed the corrupted wolves, the ones she'd freed, she spoke up. They need protection, she said. The freed ones. People will be afraid of them, suspicious. They were Shadowborn, one advisor said. They killed their own brothers. Trust will take time. Then give them a chance to earn it. Put them in positions where they can prove their loyalty. Show the kingdom that corruption doesn't define them. The advisor looked skeptical, but Draven nodded. Agreed. Sarah, assign them to your elite guard. Let them demonstrate their worth where everyone can see. Yes, my lord. As the meeting wound down, a messenger burst in, young, breathless, eyes wide. My lord, a rider from the southern garrison. Your son, Leor, he's here. He rode through the night when he heard about the battle. Draven was on his feet instantly. Where? The courtyard. They moved as one, the entire council pouring out of the hall. In the courtyard, surrounded by guards, stood Leor. He looked exhausted, his clothes travel-stained, but his silver eyes were bright. The moment he saw Draven, he ran. Draven caught him, lifting him into a crushing embrace. You were supposed to stay at the southern fortress. It was safer. I know, but I heard you were fighting the Shadow King. I couldn't just hide while you... Leor's eyes found Kalith over his father's shoulder. You're okay. You're both okay. Kalith felt her throat tighten. We're okay. Leor squirmed out of Draven's arms and launched himself at her. She caught him, this boy she'd saved in the snow, who'd started everything. His small arms wrapped around her neck, and she felt wetness on her shoulder. I was so scared, he whispered. When they took you away, I thought I'd never see you again. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? She met Draven's eyes over the boy's head, saw the question there, the hope. Promise, she said. Over the next week, life settled into a strange new rhythm. The fortress buzzed with activity as warriors returned home, reconstruction began, and the political machinery of the kingdom ground forward. Messengers came and went, carrying news to allied pacts, negotiating treaties, managing the complex web of relationships that kept the northern territories united. Kalith tried to stay out of the way. She helped where she could, organizing supplies, training with the freed wolves, learning the skills she'd need if she was going to be more than just the bonded one. But everywhere she went, people stared, whispered, some with admiration, others with suspicion, and a few with outright hostility. One afternoon, she was crossing the training yard when a voice called out, "So you're the famous exile." Calith turned. A woman stood there, tall, beautiful, wearing the marks of a pack leader. Her hair was dark red, her eyes ice blue, her stance radiating confidence and barely concealed contempt. "I'm Calith," she said carefully. "I know who you are. I'm Lyris Thane, leader of the Eastern Ridge Pack. I rode 3 days to see the wolf who managed to seduce the Alpha King." The words were deliberately insulting. Several warriors stopped training to watch. "I didn't seduce anyone," Calith said evenly. "The bond formed. I didn't ask for it." "No, you just conveniently saved his son, got yourself marked, played the helpless victim so perfectly that he fell into your trap. That's not what happened, isn't it?" Lyris circled her slowly, predator assessing prey. "You were nothing, an exile, cast out by your own pack for being weak, and now you're wearing expensive clothes, living in the Alpha King's fortress, being called his mate. Quite the upgrade." Calith's hands clenched. "I didn't plan any of this." "Of course not. You just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Just happened to bond with the most powerful wolf alive. Just happened to destroy the Shadow King and become a hero." Lyris's smile was sharp. "Some wolves have all the luck. If you have something to say it plainly." "Fine. I think you're a fraud. I think you manipulated your way into power using magic and politics and the Alpha King's grief over his dead mate. And I think you're going to destroy everything he's built." The words hit harder than they should have, because part of Calith, the part that still heard Torvin calling her worthless, believed them. "Lyris!" Draven's voice cut across the yard like a blade. He strode toward them, his presence making everyone else seem smaller. "My lord," Lyris said smoothly, "I was just introducing myself to your companion." "I heard what you said." His eyes were chips of gold ice. "Every word." "Then you know I speak only truth. The other pack leaders feel the same. They're concerned about this bond, about her influence over you." "My bond is none of their concern. It is when it affects kingdom policy. When it puts an exile, a wolf with no training, no lineage, no right to power, in a position to influence decisions that affect all our territories." "She saved your life," Draven said, his voice deadly quiet. "She saved all our lives. The least you can do is show her basic respect." "I show respect where it's earned through more than luck and magic." "Then let me be clear about something." Draven moved to stand beside Calith, his hand finding hers. "This bond is permanent. Calith is my mate. That makes her queen. And anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Is that understood?" Lyris's jaw clenched. "Yes, my lord." "Good. Now apologize." "My lord, apologize, or leave my territory and don't come back." The yard had gone completely silent. This wasn't just about Calith anymore. It was about power, about whether Draven would bend to political pressure or stand firm. Lyris looked at Calith, her eyes blazing with resentment. "I apologize for any disrespect." It was the barest apology possible, offered through gritted teeth. Calith could have let it go, should have let it go. But something inside her, something that had been beaten down for too long, refused. "No," she said quietly. Everyone stared at her. "No?" Lyris repeated. "I don't accept your apology, because you don't mean it. You think I'm weak, a fraud, someone who lucked into power." Calith stepped forward, ignoring the way her heart raced. "So let's settle this the way wolves settle disputes. Challenge me, right here, right now." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Calith," Draven began. "No, she's right about one thing. I haven't earned respect through traditional means, so let me earn it now." She met Lyris's eyes. "Unless you're afraid." Lyris's smile was vicious. "A challenge. How delightfully primitive. Very well, I accept." "Calith, you don't have to do this," Draven said urgently. "She's a trained warrior, a pack leader. You're still recovering from—" "I know what I'm doing," she squeezed his hand. "Trust me." The yard cleared, warriors forming a circle. Someone drew the traditional challenge ring in the dirt. Kalith stepped inside, her body already shifting into combat stance, movements she'd learned during her months of exile, fighting for scraps and survival. Lyris shifted into her wolf form, a massive creature with red-tinged fur and eyes like winter storms. She was beautiful and terrifying. Kalith didn't shift. Couldn't, actually. Her wolf form had always been weak, stunted, the reason they'd called her worthless. But she didn't need her wolf. She had something better. Lyris lunged, all speed and power and brutal efficiency. But Kalith had fought Shadowborn, had survived the Shadow King himself. She sidestepped, letting Lyris's momentum carry her past, then struck, a precise blow to the ribs that made the larger wolf yelp. They circled. Lyris attacked again, and again Kalith evaded, using speed and precision instead of strength. She'd learned this during exile, how to fight smarter when you couldn't fight stronger. But Lyris was experienced. She adapted quickly, cutting off Kalith's escape routes, forcing her into corners. Teeth found Kalith's shoulder, drawing blood. Claws raked across her side. Pain exploded through her and she fell. Lyris stood over her, jaws open for the killing blow. The bond flared. Not Draven's power, Kalith wasn't pulling from him. This was her own strength, amplified by the bond but originating from her. The power she'd discovered at the spire, the strength the bond had recognized. She grabbed it. Silver light blazed from her hands, and she drove it upward into Lyris's chest. Not enough to kill, she had no desire to murder, but enough to throw the larger wolf backward, to make her shift back to human form, gasping and stunned. Kalith rose slowly, the light still dancing around her fingers. I was cast out because I didn't fit their idea of strength. Because I couldn't shift properly, couldn't hunt well, couldn't be what they wanted. They called me worthless, weak, a mistake. She walked toward Lyris, who scrambled backward. But they were wrong. Strength isn't just claws and fangs. It's surviving when the world wants you dead. It's making impossible choices. It's protecting those who can't protect themselves, even when it costs you everything. She stood over Lyris now, the light fading. I didn't ask for this bond. Didn't ask to be queen, but I earned it, through blood and pain and refusing to give up. So don't you dare call it luck. She extended her hand. Lyris stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly, she took it. Kalith pulled her to her feet. I yield, Lyris said quietly. Then louder, for the crowd. I yield, and I was wrong. About you, about everything. Applause erupted. Not just polite recognition, but genuine respect. The warriors had witnessed something important, not just a fight, but a declaration. Draven was suddenly there, pulling Kalith into his arms, despite her protests about being covered in blood and dirt. You terrified me, he said, against her hair. I had to do it, had to prove, I know, and you did. He pulled back, his eyes fierce with pride. You magnificent, impossible woman. That night they held a feast, not a celebration of victory, they'd done that already, but a recognition of new beginnings. Pack leaders from allied territories attended, including Lyris, who kept her distance but offered respectful nods when their eyes met. Kalith sat beside Draven at the high table, Lior on her other side. The boy was chattering excitedly about a new training technique Sarah had shown him, his hands gesturing wildly. And then she said, if I focus the energy right here, he tapped his chest, I can push it outward like you did at the spire. That sounds dangerous, Kalith said. But cool, right? Very cool, also very dangerous. Lior grinned, and she saw Draven in that expression, the same fierce determination, the same refusal to accept limitations. He adores you, Draven said quietly. The feeling's mutual. He's been asking when you're going to officially become his mother. Kalith nearly choked on her drink. What? He lost his mother when he was 4, barely remembers her. You're the closest thing he's had since. Draven's hand found hers under the table. The bond makes us mates, but I'm asking for more than that. I'm asking if you'll be my queen, officially, ceremonially, in front of all the packs. Her heart hammered. Draven, I know it's fast. I know you didn't ask for any of this, but I need you to understand something. He turned to face her fully. When you saved Lior, you saved more than just my son. You saved the part of me that still believed in goodness, in sacrifice. in the idea that strength can come from compassion instead of cruelty. The bond brought us together, but what I feel for you, that's choice. That's real. The other packs won't accept it, not fully. Some will resist, some will leave the alliance, but others will stay because they respect strength, and you've proven yours. The kingdom will adapt because it has to, because I'm not letting you go. Kalith looked out at the feast hall, at the warriors who'd fought beside her, at the freed wolves she'd saved, at Lior who looked at her like she hung the moon. This wasn't the life she'd imagined, wasn't what she'd wanted, but it was what she'd earned. Yes, she said quietly. Draven's eyes widened. Yes? Yes, I'll be your queen. Officially. Ceremonially. All of it. The smile that crossed his face was blinding. He stood, pulling her to her feet, and the hall fell silent. An announcement, he said, his voice carrying across the space. Kalith Vorn has agreed to be formally recognized as my bonded mate and queen. The ceremony will be held at the next full moon. All allied packs are invited to attend. Cheers erupted. Not universal. Kalith could see some faces that remained skeptical, some whispers that spoke of doubt. But enough. Enough support to build on. Lior jumped up, wrapping his arms around both of them. Finally! I've been waiting forever! It's been a week, Kalith laughed. A week is forever when you're 7. The celebration lasted until dawn. When it finally wound down, Draven led Kalith to the fortress walls, where they could see the sunrise painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and pink. The Northern Ridge Pack sent a formal request, he said quietly. They want you to visit, to address the pack that cast you out. Kalith's stomach twisted. Why? Because news has spread. The exile who became queen. They want to see it for themselves. Maybe make amends. And if I refuse? Then you refuse. You don't owe them anything. She thought about it. About Torvin, dead now, his corruption consuming him. About Marin, imprisoned and broken. About all the wolves who'd watched her exile and said nothing. I'll go, she said, but not to accept their apologies. To show them what they threw away. The journey took 3 days. Draven insisted on accompanying her with a full honor guard, 50 warriors in ceremonial armor, banners flying, a display of power that couldn't be ignored. As they approached the Northern Ridge territory, memories flooded back. The caves where she'd sheltered, the hunting grounds where she'd failed time and again, the ceremonial stone where Torven had pronounced her worthless. The pack gathered as they arrived, hundreds of wolves watching in silence. Kalith recognized faces, warriors who'd trained beside her, elders who'd dismissed her, her own family who'd looked away. The current alpha, a younger male who'd taken over after Torven's death, stepped forward. He looked nervous. Kalith Vorn, he said formally. You honor us with your presence. Do I? She dismounted, walking forward alone despite Draven's protective instinct. The last time I was here, you called me worthless, cast me out to die. That was the honor you showed me. Shame flickered across his face. We were wrong. Torven was wrong. We see that now. Do you, or do you just see that I have power now, that exiling me was politically inconvenient? Both, he admitted. But mostly the first. What you did, destroying the Shadow King, saving the kingdom, it proved everything we believed about strength was incomplete. Limited. Wrong. Kalith looked past him at the assembled pack, at the faces that had haunted her dreams during those first terrible months of exile. I spent 8 months learning to survive alone, she said, her voice carrying across the gathering, fighting for every scrap of food, sleeping in caves, wondering if each night would be my last. And the whole time I heard your voices, worthless, weak, a mistake. Silence. Heavy and uncomfortable. But you know what I learned? That worth isn't determined by how well you fit someone else's expectations. It's determined by what you do when everything is stripped away. By the choices you make when no one is watching. She turned back to the alpha. I forgive you. All of you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying hatred weighs me down, and I'm done being burdened by what you think of me. The alpha's eyes glistened. Thank you. I'm not finished. She straightened, every inch a queen now. I forgive you, but I'll never forget. And neither should you, Because somewhere in your pack right now, there's another wolf who doesn't fit, who struggles, who's being told they're worthless. And when you find them, I want you to remember me. Remember what happened when you threw away someone with potential just because you couldn't see it. She turned to leave. Wait, someone called. An elderly female pushed through the crowd, Elder Kessa, who'd been one of the loudest voices demanding Calith's exile. She looked smaller than Calith remembered, bent with age and regret. I spoke against you, Kessa said, her voice trembling. Called you weak, said you had no place among us. I was cruel and blind and wrong. Tears streaked her weathered face. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. Calith felt her throat tighten. Of all the people she'd expected to apologize, Kessa wasn't one of them. Why? She asked quietly. Why did you hate me so much? Because I saw myself in you. I was the weak one once, barely surviving my own exile before I proved myself. And instead of helping you, I punished you for reminding me of what I'd been. It was cowardice, cruelty, and I've regretted it every day since. The honesty in those words cracked something in Calith's chest. Not forgiveness, that would take time, but understanding. Thank you for saying that, she said simply. She returned to Draven, who helped her mount her horse. As they rode away from the Northern Ridge territory, she didn't look back. That chapter of her life was closed. The ceremony took place 3 weeks later, timed with the full moon. Every allied pack sent representatives. The Great Hall had been transformed, flowers braided through the rafters, candles burning in silver holders, the ancient ceremonial stones arranged in a circle. Calith wore a gown of white and silver, simple but elegant, with the bond mark visible on her palm. Her hair was braided with winter roses, a symbol of strength in harsh conditions. Laur served as witness, his silver eyes bright with excitement. Sarah stood as honor guard. And the freed wolves, the 8 she'd saved from corruption, formed a protective circle around the ceremony space. Draven wore traditional alpha regalia, black leather and steel, his authority unmistakable. But when he looked at her, all that power softened into something gentler. You could still run, he whispered as they stood before the assembled crowd. So could you. Not a chance. The ceremony was conducted by Thera, the eldest mage, her voice resonant with power as she spoke the ancient words. When it came time for the vows, Draven went first. I vow to protect you with everything I am, to stand beside you against any threat, to honor the strength you've shown and the sacrifices you've made. You are my mate, my queen, my equal, and I will spend every day proving worthy of the bond that chose us. Then it was Calith's turn. She looked out at the assembled wolves, at former enemies and new allies, at skeptics and supporters, at Lior, who was barely containing his excitement, at Draven, whose eyes held nothing but fierce devotion. I vow to never forget where I came from, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to use whatever power I have for good, not glory. You gave me a home when I had none, purpose when I felt worthless, a family when I thought I'd lost everything. I am your mate, your queen, your partner, and together we will build something stronger than any one wolf alone. Thera brought forth the ceremonial crown, not ornate or gaudy, but simple silver shaped like intertwined wolves. She placed it on Calith's head. Calith Vorn, formerly of the Northern Ridge Pack, now of no pack and all packs. I name you Queen of the Northern Territories. May your reign be just, your strength eternal, your compassion boundless. The crowd erupted in cheers. Draven pulled her close, and the bond blazed between them. Not just connection anymore, but recognition, choice, love. My queen, he said, smiling. My king, she replied. And when they kissed, the entire hall felt the power of it. 2 souls that should never have met, forged by fire and darkness into something unbreakable. The feast that followed lasted 3 days. Territories that had threatened to leave the Alliance stayed. New packs requested membership. And slowly, grudgingly, the political landscape shifted to accept this new reality. On the 4th morning, Calith stood on the fortress walls, watching the sun rise over the territories that were now hers to protect. The wind carried the scent of pine and snow, clean and cold. Draven joined her, Lior between them. Any regrets? He asked. She thought about the question. Thought about the girl who'd been cast out 8 months ago, alone and afraid and convinced she'd die in the wilderness. That girl had believed she was worthless, had internalized every cruel word, every rejection. But she was gone now. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who'd learned that worth wasn't given. It was claimed. That power came from surviving the impossible, that the wilderness that tried to break you could forge you into something unbreakable instead. No regrets, she said. Just gratitude. For what? She looked at him, at Lior, at the kingdom spreading before them, for the blizzard that nearly killed me, for the choice to save a dying child, for the bond that changed everything. All of it led here, to this moment, to this life. Lior tugged on her hand. Does this mean you'll teach me that light thing? The power you used against the Shadow King? Absolutely not. You're 7. But ask me again when you're 12. He pouted, but she could see the smile hiding underneath. Draven's arm wrapped around her shoulders, pulling her close. The council wants to discuss expansion into the Western territories, and there's a dispute brewing between 2 allied pacts that needs mediation, and it can wait until after breakfast, Kalith interrupted. Right now I want to stand here with my family and watch the sunrise. Your family, he repeated softly, and she heard the emotion in those words. The wonder that someone like him, who'd lost so much, could build something new from the ashes. They stood together as dawn broke fully, painting the world in gold and hope. Below them, the fortress stirred to life. Warriors trained, advisors planned, the machinery of the kingdom turned. But up here, on the walls, there was just this, just them, just peace earned through fire. Kalith Vorn, the exile who became queen, smiled at the horizon and thought about how far she'd come. From the frozen wilderness where she'd expected to die, to this moment, to this impossible life. The wilderness hadn't broken her. It had revealed who she'd always been, strong, brave, worthy. And now the wilderness that had tried to destroy her bowed to her strength. She was home. She was queen. And her story, the one everyone said would end in obscurity and death, had become legend. The girl they called worthless had proven them all wrong, and she was just getting started.